Welcome to Podcast Stories. You might think I hit the jackpot marrying a doctor, envisioning a life of luxury and ease. But let me set the record straight. I entered the scene at the wrong time in her career. Allow me to share my tale. I crossed paths with Karen back when we were both attending different community colleges to save money. Karen was undeniably bright, with a knack for discussing a myriad of topics she'd read about. Yet, she was somewhat naive, perhaps overly trusting. Practical skills weren't her strong suit. We opted for junior colleges due to financial constraints. My father, a self-made man in construction, struggled to keep us afloat despite his hard work. I witnessed his flaws firsthand, his stubbornness, his aversion to listening, and his dismissal of those he deemed too intelligent for their own good. Little did he realize, he needed sharp minds to thrive. Determined not to repeat his mistakes, I saw education as my escape route. Fate brought Karen and me together in summer school just before we transferred to UMass. I pursued a diverse range of courses through a self-directed studies program, delving into mechanical and civil engineering, chemistry, history, and more. I embraced overloads, seizing every opportunity to expand my knowledge. Karen, on the other hand, pursued pre-med with a lighter course load, aiming for top grades, a must for aspiring doctors. After all, who wants a doctor who only knows 70 to 80% of what ails you? You, on the other hand, looked at college as a trade school for life. I wanted to be the contractor my dad never could. I wanted to know all that I needed to know and a bit more besides. We both graduated with bachelor degrees together. Karen was really lucky, with no relatives in the medical field and no influential recommendations. A medical school in Philadelphia accepted her and gave her a modest scholarship. We moved to Philadelphia, got married that summer. I was out from under my dad trading his irony for her velvet one. Her father clearly saw her stellar future and certain of my eventual bankruptcy and failure, impressed upon her the importance of a prenuptial agreement. He also gave us a hefty wedding present of 20% down payment on the house of our choice. Make that a choice. What the agreement said was basically what she owned and or earned were hers personally if we divorced for any reason, no alimony or child support, and we kept what we had earned for ourselves. So the wedding gift was really to her alone, and as he thought we were not likely to buy a house anytime soon, the gift was off in the indefinite future. No one ever accused him of being free with his money. I agreed, but for reasons of symmetry, I insisted it be changed so as to be the same for both of us. She couldn't get child support, alimony, or my money. I also suggested that we not be responsible for each other's debts. She batted that because she had huge school debts, but I pointed out that if I, a contractor, went belly up and the creditors got through the corporate shield, she could be liable for that debt too. End of argument. Her dad was delighted that his family was protected from my unsuitability. Well, screw him. We were living 300 miles away, and I would only see him infrequently. We started our married life with separate credit cards and checking accounts. As the worldly one, I ended up running the finances, making money, doing the bills, and signing the checks, hers and mine. I also set up a system to track our income as to where it went. She earned very little during school, so the income division was sort of theoretical. Philadelphia was good to me. I found a good job with a contractor and spent 2 years learning the area and supporting the two of us. Of course, she was racking up huge, to me at least, student loans, all of which she would have to start paying off after graduation. But don't worry, be happy. Doctors make big money. I launched out on my own against my wife's counsel. My father-in-law called me a fool. I can't really hold it against him as my dad said the same thing. I am proud to say I made money from the start. It helped that Karen and I matched each other in the number of hours we devoted to career. It was a prodigious effort. Both of us were making time spent together was precious as. I could be more flexible in my hours. I made sure that I was around whenever she had time off. It was hard, but we were young, strong, and in love. She timed her pregnancy so she would deliver a month after graduation and hit her target within 2 weeks, a lovely baby girl. Her residency was worse than med school as far as time demands, I assume this should be man's, was concerned. She was an underpaid slave at the hospital, a handmaiden devoted to Asclepius, the god of medicine. I deliberately mispronounced it as handmaiden to the god of syphilis, and opined though was for Alfred Fred for short. So, Fred Syphilis became the guy who was causing all of the screw-ups and problems in medicine. Looking back, I'm not sure that our marriage really survived her residency. You read about residents screwing each other on the night shift. I'm sure she did not because she was so exhausted. Day after day, the only difference between screwing her and an ice block would have been the temperature. It was a hard, lonely time for me, made bearable by my daughter and a demanding, growing business. Unfortunately, we got used to the other not being around. Her internship and later her medical practice easily consumed 55 to 60 hours per week, plus the hours were erratic. I continued to take care of our daughter. I kept a dayminder diary for both work and home life. It was a job keeping track of all of the scheduled stuff for my daughter, my wife, and myself. Daycare was essential, of course. It really bothered me that my daughter was with strangers so much. I moved my office to a storefront I bought cheap across the street from the daycare center. I hired a grandmotherly woman with the grandmotherly name of Mildred as my office manager. While I needed her around full-time to answer the phone and such, there really wasn't enough work to keep her occupied. It was her idea that she would watch my daughter for the last 3 hours of the workday. My daughter was delighted, and so was I. Emancipation Day came for the wife with the end of her internship. We spent a couple of weeks at the shore before she started in as a family physician in a small practice in the near suburbs. She was hot to buy a house. The banks and mortgage brokers were offering no money down mortgages, no credit check. She showed them the pay stub and picked out a new house. I had little choice, as she pointed out, it was her money. She wanted a new McMansion, and I wanted a pre-war house, one built between 1900 and 1940. We got the new, cheaply built box about a 45-minute commute from my office. Her father's wedding present became her end-of-residency present as well, 2 for 1. It amounted to a $30,000 down payment on a house. It was a goodly chunk of money for him, but his daughter had stars in her eyes and wanted a $700,000 mansion. His contribution just about covered taxes and closing costs. At 7% interest, the mortgage was $4,500 per month, plus taxes. Heat, upkeep, car, and various insurances boosted the monthly bill to $6,500. Her student loan payments were another $5,000 a month. I tried to get her to lower her sights to a more modest $250,000 to $300,000 house, but honey, this is what I have been working for all these years. After years of eating beans, you want to spend everything on a house and continue eating beans? That's nuts. We're young, now's the time to enjoy life, not be tied hand and foot to a huge house. I lost. Still worse, over the next 3 years, she took out equity loans to furnish it with ostentatious, poor-quality furniture. It galled me that the fine traditional furniture I inherited from my uncle, all handmade by him, was relegated to my den and a spare bedroom. Going this far into debt was also nuts. I watched debt like a hawk in my business, as undercapitalization can bring you down quicker than anything except stupidity. Business was good, no, it was very good. I was doing well, and I wanted more time with my family. So, I decided to move my office closer to my home. Opportunity knocked at my door. I was working on a big project, restoring a Great Gatsby-era mansion. I had built over $350,000 to date, and that was just the structural and exterior work. Unfortunately, the owner went down in the financial debacle and had to sell. I had a mechanic's lien on the house, and he didn't have the money to clear it. He still owed me $110,000, although about $30,000 of that was for materials contracted for but not yet needed. There was a lovely gatehouse and carriage shed on the property, about 10 minutes from my house. It sat more or less by itself on an acre of land that was mostly rocky hillside but with a nice view. It was connected to the main estate by an unused 25 feet right-of-way that snaked up the hillside. It was easy to cut this property off from the mansion. The buildings looked to be in much worse condition than they were, so I offered to buy it for what he owed me plus $45,000 cash. He jumped for it, and I finished up the work I had in progress and set up a straw company to purchase the property. I converted the carriage shed to offices, but as it was a historical property, I kept the original exterior, including the arched double doors. This also preserved the option of using it in the future as a garage. With my new office habitable, I began renovating the gatehouse in the months ahead. When a crew had slack time, I put them to work on the house. It was typical of my wife's ability to tune out my business doings. When I showed her the new office, she assumed I was renting it. She was uninterested, didn't ask a single question, not even how much I was paying. She said the place looked old-fashioned and they should pull it down, build something nice. Sad that such a really big thing in my life would be something so uninteresting